Warning Wednesdays. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be joined today with Dan Norville, who's president and founder of Vivo Investment Group. So, hey, now I want to ask you about something that's gone wrong for you. You got plenty of history, probably share a lot of horror stories with me, but let our viewers know something that's gone wrong for you and how you've overcome it and how you adjusted in the future based on it.
Sure. Yeah. On the strategy, we've pursued over 30 projects, as I mentioned. We knew that the biggest risk in the strategy was zoning or entitlement risk or city risk, right? And so early on, we said, we're not going to take entitlement risk in this strategy. We're not going to take zoning risk. We're going to buy projects that are zoned by right for multifamily day one. And that's all we're going to buy. Now, there is a sliding scale that we've noticed over the years, unfortunately, with cities, in that even if you are zoned by right, have all the entitlements in place, the change of use process is still arduous in certain municipalities. The cities want their involvement. They want to tell you exactly what you need to do to change the use from a hotel to an apartment building. And that becomes code risk, is what we call it, not zoning risk, right? That's a tough one to navigate, because when you're in the acquisition phase, you have a limited time to acquire a project. You're not submitting plans to the city before you acquire it. You're not done with architectural plans. So that risk is always out there. And on 2 out of our 30 projects, we were unable to actually convert the use from hotel to apartments. Big learning exercise for us. But like I said, with the right team on the bus, you're going to figure out the pivot. And what we ended up doing with those 2 projects, we call it our Vivo Flex division. And it actually has some interesting legs on it, because we don't need to convert and get a new C of O as apartments. We end up going with month-to-month rentals that are at a premium rental rate for the short-term nature. We get higher rents. There is more turnover, obviously, because they're monthly rentals. But we've been able to hit better than our pro forma NOI income on these projects because of the higher rental rates, higher expenses. But at the end of the day, it still flows through nicely. They look, smell, and feel and run just like apartments. Same staffing. We use RealPage. We do background checks, credit checks, but we can't sign more than 30-day leases, and we have to pay a hotel tax. It's a different tax when you get up to that length of stay, usually. But it was a pivot that we had to take on, and it did not allow us to achieve the full upside in valuation that an apartment building would achieve. But it was an inherent risk to the strategy we knew all along. And so that was the pivot. And really what it came down to on those was it was still a better pivot to do the Vivo Flex model than spend the umpteen millions of dollars that the city was going to ultimately hit us with to do the change of use. So we kept our costs down, got the income up, and it was still a good result. However, today, now when we re-underwrite these deals going forward, we're putting in what we call a code risk contingency in all of our projects that allows for us to have basically a slush fund for whatever the city might hit us with. That is code related upgrades that we just won't know at acquisition. So you've got your normal construction contingency. Then we've got an additional contingency for change of use contingency, we call it. And 8, 9 times out of 10, we don't touch it. But it's nice to have on those 1 or 2 out of 10 where the city says, oh, you need to vent your hoods because we're using commercial restaurant kitchen codes for your apartments. And we say, that doesn't make sense. But then you get a fire marshal in Texas that says, I don't care if it makes sense, you're doing it. And $600,000 later, you did it. And luckily, we have in-house construction. We got it done in 42 days to put those hoods in and vent them to the exterior and cut the ceiling up. And we actually didn't charge a change order in that one. That's the benefit with us is, our construction team, it's in-house, it's our team, and we'll take on the work because we have a vested interest in the project. Like I said, we want it to be successful for the ownership, which is us in part. So we got it done, but now we do include and pad in those contingencies. And I have a more colorful name for the contingency, but I don't want to curse online. So, but it's the,
I bet.
The people, the inspectors, we have a colorful name for them when they come in and they do that, where we know they're in the wrong. We could fight them. We could sue, whatever. It's not worth it. The legal cost of going after a city or a fire marshal, definitely not worth it. Bend over backwards, do what they want, make them happy, get it done. And with us having the resources to do it, it's never worth the fight.
Well, that's a great lesson learned. And you create a whole division out of it, the Vivo Flex division. I love that. And And I've never heard anyone say, code risk, but it makes perfect sense. After going through hundreds of deals last several years, underwriting deal after deal, looking for shovel-ready deals. First, you get through a whole wave of people that say they have a shovel-ready deal, and you find out it's not really shovel-ready. And you say, oh, it's entitled. It's not really entitled. What do you mean by entitled? Then you go to, oh, it's by right, but it's not entitled. Now you have just this whole other little area that you discovered. What's a great lesson? A lot of people could use that lesson and plan for it. I can't even think of how many examples, but I can tell you, I did all the due diligence and helped underwrite a deal in Miami, a large condo deal, and it was by right, and it was with a reputable developer. 2 years later, it still wasn't. Shovels weren't in the ground because there's something in the city that does it. And then we've done stuff in small towns. Same thing, large subdivision out in Colorado. The local planner insists, even though there's 550 some homes being built, that all courses of the paving have to be done, all sidewalks in before the first building permit goes out. They're like, well, we're going to be bringing excavators in and going to ruin all these sidewalks in the road, but you can't fight City Hall, right? So you know better than me. You just can't. So finding that least path of resistance. So that's great. You add the contingency in, and hopefully you don't run into too many of those and, frustrating situations, but you've made lemonade out of lemons in that one.
When you've got 30, it's all about the reps, right? When you've got 30 reps, you start to know what to look for and who to talk to at the city to understand who the blockades are going to be. That's a big part, because it's not just code risk. Code risk comes down to people risk. Who are the people behind the codes that want to interpret them, how they want to interpret them. And we're in this gray area where there's a lot of interpretation that can happen. And so luckily we can show that we've done so many of these in so many different states and cities. And we go to that city and say, look, this is how it's been done before. You're not stepping over the line here to allow this. We can show you it's been allowed before and we've gotten it done this way. So that helps a lot, but it is the repetitions, and it's whoever those people are behind, but it's partly business, partly politics. They're going to leverage what leverage they have. And if they're wanting to get paid impact fees, they want to get that money for the city, or they want to get a beautiful project delivered. And they might tell you, oh, it's going to be really simple in the front end, and you acquire it and they know that you're locked in, and they're like, well, we think we want some more trees, and why don't you paint the building, blue, and all this fun stuff. And those are things that you really have to try and head off.
Why don't you pay for the local rec center, right? And everything, and you stand in front of city council and it's all about how we need affordable housing. And then when you're the developer, it is time to pay your fees. We need a fee for this. This is like, and we need a bond. And why don't you give us a letter of credit with the money in the bank while you're doing that? So you're paying double. But in some of their defense, especially sometimes newer people cycle in at some cities, not all, but some towns cycle in at faster rates. Those people enjoy being educated in the process. And if you show them a clear path of how it can work, sometimes you get lucky enough and you hit all green lights, but
that's why we like to do multiple deals in the same city, right? And so once we get into a city, we learn the lay of the land. That really makes it interesting. Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte, these are all cities that we've done multiple projects in. Now we know exactly who the players are, what the deal looks like. Doesn't mean it's easy, but at least we have a game plan, right? And we can get in and follow the same path.
That makes sense. Hey, thanks for having me on. If anybody else wants to find out more about what we're doing, please come to froggycompanies.com. Check out our 3 different business areas. We also have the Froggy Fund 1 that's now open for up to $18 million. We're going to be investing that $18 million across a diverse number of assets, cash flowing and ground up. And I'm really excited about this fund and really confident that we can outperform most of the other people out there in terms of what we invest in and how we do our due diligence and the type of partners we put together. So it's great talking to you, and see you next time.